Hey,
Hello.
here with Friederike Landau-Donnelly, who's been visiting the IUR as our artist in residence in 2025.
Yes, hello.
Hey.
Happy to be here, even though it's already my last day. Time has flown by, which
Mm.
is a bit of a shame, but there is a promise lingering that I can come back and continue. So, yeah, glad to be here, Julie. Hi.
Yeah, same. It'd be really cool to see you again, so we're looking forward to it. But yeah, here just wanted to chat with you a little bit today and get a little bit of your, I guess, experiences with the IUR, with being the artist in residency
Mhm.
here, and also hearing more about just kind of your background and how you were able to weave it through your
Yeah,
time here. Because you're here as our artist in residence, but of course you are an urban researcher, you're a cultural geographer yourself.
hmm
I'm curious a little bit about what your experience has been like blending artistic processes with urban research and
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to think about that out loud because I feel like I've done sort of like creative branching out in a variety of things I've been doing since I was, teaching or when I was doing research myself as a full-time researcher,
Mhm.
employed at a university. But now that I'm in a bit of a transition, I feel like I'm really appreciating the residency as this sort of like ledge that I can walk on a bit more, like this plank that I can walk on a bit more solidly. So I've really appreciated the sort of like institutional framework that's super open, but also it is an institutional framework. So it's not just me as an individual kind of like being silly and obsessed with certain things we will talk about. But yeah, I mean, branching out from purely academic practice and the way that we convey knowledge and rationalize knowledge and stuff like that has been super inspiring to me. It is also exhausting and
Mhm.
irritating in a lot of ways because you don't really know what to hold on to when you kind of like let that scaffolding of, oh, it has to be a peer reviewed article, if you let that scaffolding go a bit. But yeah, it's been super productive. And I do notice that the different parts of my brain still always interconnect with like literatures and concepts and conversations and theories about public space, about art and public space, which have been my sort of like empirical research interests for the last couple of years.
Okay, but I'd love to hear more. You said something when you kind of first arrived here, which was that you had an obsession
Mm-hmm.
with the lamps at Folkets Park.
Right.
Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about where that came from and what it led to with
Yeah.
the work that you did while you were
Yeah.
here?
So maybe I can clarify what I mean with an obsession
Yeah.
because I think I'm very new to allowing myself to be obsessed with something.
Yeah.
So I might have a bit of a strange, pretty naive or sort of like, yeah, naive understanding of what an obsession is because other people are obsessed with things already and I just haven't claimed that for myself.
Mm.
And I think I choose this wording because initially I proposed a slightly different project with a slightly different focus. And, if I'd been here as a researcher, I would have probably tried to kind of like, bite my teeth into it and be like, no, but I have to like track these people down and I have to like respond to these questions and kind of like follow through with what I committed to. And now that I had this more artistic mandate, I feel like it changed my research questions in, that terminology towards something that was really standing out for me, which I didn't know about beforehand. So I feel like it was a much more open epistemological kind of like approach to the park. And I mean, I'm still doing the research in Folkets Park, but yeah, I've never been interested in street furniture or urban design in the narrower sense of the term. I was looking to investigate the sort of like spatial dynamics, insides, outsides, yeah, and sort of like distributions of commissioned art or public art and street art, which is on the on the legal graffiti wall. And just because I couldn't really get in touch with this, materiality of the space or the kind of like vivacity that I assumed it would have, I shifted towards a more inanimate object, a lamp, which doesn't really talk back in the same way as maybe graffiti would do,
Right.
because it's legible in a different way. But it really was striking to me how many different types of lamps there are in the park, and there is no coherent these types of lamps are here, these types of lamps are there. They're just all scattered across, and it feels a bit like this sort of like mushroomy assortment of different types of lamp. And then, probably with this sort of like attempt at systematization, I then came up with this typology of lamps to say, okay, what do these individual types kind of stand for? And if you want, we can maybe walk through the 4 types of lamps that I identified. Of course, there is more. So this is not a conclusive analysis, but I feel like in the parameters of artistic research, it doesn't have to be. So we identified 4 types. The first one I call the so-called nostalgic lamp, which alludes to, the Folkpark in Malmö being the oldest one in Sweden. So it was, founded by the labor union in 1891, I believe. So yeah, really like a very old one. So this used to be gaslit. So it has like an open facing kind of, go ahead. This is another rendering of what I call adorably shitty painting. Just kind of like, physically, haptically, tactile way of, talking about the objecthood of this thing. But it stands for, I think, reminding us of the long historical legacy that the park has. Then another one is this attempt at 3D modeling with stolen materials and toilet paper. So I've tried to be very, very low budget. So this is what I call the gigantic or giganticized lamp, which is really interesting because it has this explicit sort of like design focus. It's, I don't even know, 4 meters tall or something like that. If you sit next to it, you feel like you're the tiny person. I'm wondering if there's something about like, feeling humble, feeling infantilized or whatever at stake with it. But so these ones are quite interesting because they're located both inside and outside the park. They're illuminated throughout the day as well. So they don't only serve this function of lighting up a space that is sometimes dark and sometimes light. So there is this whole, aesthetic and I would say like explicitly curatorial element to the gigantic lamp. As a sort of like shoot off of this, I called another lamp the minimalistic lamp. So this is really just sleek, straightforward, pretty, rationalistic or functionalist way of lighting up space. It's probably more modern. There's no sort of like knickknack around it and stuff like that. And I called it the sort of like boring little sibling to the other one because they often also stand in close relation. And then last but not least, this type of lamp is super interesting because it's located both inside and outside the park. But the one that caught my attention the most is the one that is around the roundabout, which has a very contested history of, being a site of protest, being a site of drug trafficking, and this alleged place of insecurity. So here, next to the 4 light bulbs, we have a cute little security camera with a 360 sort of like all around surveillance monitor going on. And it's interesting that most of the other lamps inside the park do not have security cameras attached to them, but this one does. So this is kind of like placed in the middle of the roundabout, which then has benches and other sources of lighting that are not working right now or that are not active right now. But so this gives you light across the roundabout, but also the security camera is kind of like really tracking everybody's movement. And this is what I call the securitized lamp. So as you can see, they're not just doodles and, mock-ups. They're trying to get at something that has to do with the governance of light, who's the lightness for, who's the darkness for, who decides what goes in here. I think from a more than human perspective, you can also ask, who's the light serving? What about animals? Like there's lots of rabbits and some rats and birds that don't necessarily need this all illuminated park 24/7. And those are some of the thoughts that I'm, kind of like dragging in from critical geographies or, like thinking about the interaction between humans and non-humans or the, nature culture debate and like new materialist feminisms and stuff like that into this very concrete locale of the park. And that's sort of like where I am right now.
Awesome. Yeah, it really seems like you've dove in while you were here, and like a lot of good research, sometimes you end up with a lot of questions, and I think that's great. But where do you maybe see this work taking you in the future? Do you have any plans on the horizon that you're really excited about or looking forward to working with?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. I mean, I'm in a bit of a limbo in thinking about, is this the end result, or is this just sketches? Is this just artistic research that then gets translated into something else? Like, are we making hundreds of these little lamps and making this little forest of, you know, mapping where the lamps are and what would be the purpose of that and stuff like that? I think one fairly concrete project that I have is I would like to work with a riso printer to kind of get this color scheme that is very prevalent in the park out. So a lot of it, also a lot of trees are illuminated by sources of pink and blue lighting.
Right.
So it's this sort of like, yeah, pretty artificial Barbie aesthetic. Also lots of pastel colors, which I feel like is a choice for like non-threatening, you know, gatekeeping, placemaking, stuff like that. So the pinkish and the bluish color palette kind of like struck me. And I think with riso, you could work really well to, yeah, kind of like reproduce this typology in another way and think about, yeah, the choice of colors. I thought a little bit about the existence of red and green tape. So red tape being this sort of like, you know, excessive bureaucracy, overdoing it on the rules, being inefficient because of too much bureaucracy. And the counterpart of green tape being a bit more permissive and, you know, allowing people to go and be creative or like paint the wall in their own ways. But you don't really find this dialectic of blue and of green and red in the park. You find baby blue and pink. So I'm trying to play with what that tells us about the boundaries of, you know, allowing people or appealing to a certain clientele, and in a way also, you know, this sort of like gentrification by design or by beautification. And I think, yeah, playing with the colors a bit more, you could bring out some of the sort of like power dynamics below that are very subtle. And who knows, yeah, maybe I'll keep working with making tiny objects. I'm also working on a big piece of writing, not in the sort of like academic, peer-reviewed kind of like parameter, and very consciously so, because I notice I don't write well that way, or I feel like it's very constricting. So now I'm working with a lot of photos, bringing in some of the sketches, and writing in a more, I don't want to say authentic, but like in a way that sounds a bit more like me.
Right.
Because I think sometimes my voice in how I talk about my research and how I write about it, there's quite a difference.
Yeah.
And that difference doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. But with this piece of writing, which, yeah, for now, I think it resembles most like a photo essay or something. I'm really enjoying the writing. So that's actually the first thing that I do when I wake up in Malmö. I like get a coffee in bed, sit there and just like write about lamps. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here with us, and we look forward to welcoming you back in the future. And
thank you.
Yeah, keep us posted on what's next.
Will do. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.